Hello, students. Students, now hopefully you would have gone through this particular uh, the part A I told you, students, to refer those pages which I have told you to go through the same. So hopefully, students, you all have referred it. So if that be the case, students, let's then proceed in this regard. So what I'm going to do, students, now is that those pages quickly we will run it together and then try to get a kind of a closure of this entire thing which we are going to discuss it. So, for students, I told you about, let's talk about the GSTR1. In the remark side, students, of your GSTR 3B, which is the return which I've talked about it. So, we have already discussed. So, I'm just going to take you through first towards the GSTR1. Now, in that particular context, students, page number 4, in this regard, students, let's look upon to this one. First up, page number 4. Now, students, first thing first, always be careful in this context that this GSTR 3B, GSTR 1, which has been there, this GSTR 1, students, who is the person who is required to file the GSTR 1? GSTR 1, students, is required to be filed by that person who is required to file what? The GSTR 3B. So GSTR 1 is required to be filed by those who is required to file GSTR 3B. Always bear this particular point in mind that this GSTR1, which we are knowing about it, will be required to be filed all by those. So therefore, in that context, students, we have seen that who is required to file the GSTR 3B. I've given you the three categories. The normal taxable person, which has been there in this regard. Then thereafter your QRMP, and then finally, students, the casual taxable person. So all these person students would be required to file the GSTR1, and who GSTR1, thereafter this comes your the GSTR2 and 2B auto populate, and that will facilitate for me to file my GSTR3B. That is the process that we all are aware. As I told you, students, the GSTR1 talks about the outward taxable supplies. Now, be careful on this particular part, students. The outward taxable supplies, students, in this context. So, think of it. I'm filing my GSTR1, it gets auto populated, and then it will be talking about all my output taxable supply. Now, based on my details of the output taxable supply which I have filed, the auto population will be done, and you, who are the recipient, will see in that portal how much of the ITC you can avail by virtue of the GST which has been charged by the supplier. So whatever the GST which is charged by the supplier, on that basis you will be in a position to avail that ITC. You all are aware of that. So therefore, students, and the ITC would be claimed by the person who is a recipient and he is also pursuing the business. So therefore, it is a B2B supply, students, which is very important over here in this context. Always bear it in mind. Now, if the B2B supply, students, if you see, if it is an interstate supply in this context or the intrastate supply, can you see that? Whether it is interstate or intrastate supply, then invoice wise details of all the supplies to be uploaded. All the supplies. This is therefore important. What is the context? All the supplies. Whereas if it is B2C, which means if you are a consumer who will not be availing the ITC because you are the file consumer, then in that case, students, it is only relevant that they need to only know the interstate supply, students. And that is what they are only understanding primarily how much of the interstate supply that you have done, for the only reason for the government record, that is to they need to transfer it from the IGST to the relevant state government where the goods will be finally be consumed. So in that situation, students, they say that this GSTR1 obligation will come into play when the invoice value is more than rupees 2.5 lakhs. So only when it is material item that you will be required to give the invoice wise details to be uploaded. But if supposingly if it is a small amount of invoice which is not more than rupees 2,50,000, then state wise and rate wise consolidated details to be uploaded. So in that case, say for example, I have done the interstate supply for say Maharashtra of say rupees 5 lakhs. I have done total, I'm just talking about total. My each invoice is not more than 2.5 lakhs, but my total of all the invoice, say I have done the supply to other states, say for example, Madhya Pradesh is of 5 lakhs. Say to Gujarat, it is of 6 lakhs, but not individual, consolidated. So what I will do is just that then I will do a state wise and the rate wise. So if what is a in that case also if the rates are different, so I will also do a further breaking up in that particular state. What is the supply which is charged at a different rate? So state wise, rate wise, consolidated details to be uploaded. Is that clear to all of you? For intra-state supply within the state, rate-wise consolidated details of all invoices to be uploaded. But it is all about the consolidated details, not of invoice. That is the point. And why they are just trying to take the summary for B2C? Because as you know, the consumer will not be in a position to avail the ITC. This only would be relevant for say your MC. Only that is the reason why this about the content or the manner in which the filing requirement is put up for GSTR1. So if it is a B2B, yes, whether it is inter or intra, each details of the invoice has to be given irrespective of the amount. But if it is B2C, then this is only for the purpose of record that they want to know the detail. And if therefore it is an interstate supply, then the monetary threshold will decide. The monetary threshold will decide whether it would be an individual invoice or it will be a consolidated invoice. That will be the scenario. Now, students, this point which has been there for the rectification, which is there over here, rectification of error in GSTR1 filed for the previous period. So, students, you cannot revise the returns that you have filed, but what you can do is that you can rectify it. So, rectification would be like here particulars furnished in GSTR1 of the prior period can be amended by way of amendment table given in GSTR1 of the subsequent period. And how many subsequent periods should by when subsequent period? They have not tell you the next particular month. They're not telling you should that this should be the next particular month. So subsequent of how many period in that case? That is the point. If you see over here, maximum time limit within which such amendments are permissible is earlier of the following date. What is the maximum time limit student within which amendments are permissible is earlier of the following dates. What is that dates? 30th day of November following the end of the financial year to which such details pertain. 30th day of November following the end of the financial year to which details pertain, or what should it? The date of filing of the relevant annual return. What is the second one, students? Date of filing of the relevant annual return. So by when you can do the rectification, that is the permissible time limit. So students, in this case, this rectification provision that you are reading, it is not only for applicable for GSTR, it is also for GSTR 3B, GSTR 3B2, GSTR 3B2, same provision, same provision. And one more point that I want all of you to write that this is the regular returns. Okay, one point is this that annual return, primary student. Can you rectify your annual return? Annual return? No, you cannot be rectified. Can you tell me why? Just apply the common sense. You would have known that the annual return, any case, is 31st of December in your rectification. has to be done by 30th of November. If the 30th of November is when the rectification has to be done, and your annual return is put up at 31st of December, so definitely you cannot rectify your annual return. Okay, so that is the limited point which I just wanted to share with all of you in this context. Now, what about the nil GSTR1? Please be careful over here. Filing of GSTR1 is mandatory of for all the normal and the casual taxpayer. We have seen that. Even if, this is important, what? Even if what? There is no business activity in any of the taxable period. That is what has to be consent. So a supplier, even though he may not have done any business activity in a particular period, will he still be required to file the GSTR1? And the answer is that is what should, as far as the GSTR1 is concerned. Now coming to the other one, which is your IFF facilities, which has been there. So if I just go back, students, this IFF facility, which was being put up over here, what are the cases in this regard? I'll just. So here in invoice furnishing facility for taxpayer opting for the QRMP scheme. Told you already, because they are doing a quarterly what? Quarterly return and a monthly payment. This regard, students. So therefore, in this context, just think of it. I just now told you that when you file the GSTR1, when you file what? The GSTR1, student, that case what happens? Auto populate 2A, 2B, and through that, the receiver who is also doing the business, he will know how much of the GST will be eligible for him for the purpose of availment of ITC. Of how much of the GST in this particular context you will be eligible to avail what? The ITC. That exactly the point, student, in this regard. So how much of the ITC can be availed in this regard is what this particular point is all about. Now, as far as the QRMP is concerned, they actually will file only a quarterly return. So, technically speaking, because it is a quarterly return but a monthly payment, so generally now what happens, the GSTR1 technically, if at all we have to say, then every, just think of it technically that the GSTR1 will be filed only on the third month. Think on those lines. Just before your 3B return, you will file the GSTR1 because the due date is just before the 3B return. Now, just think logically, your receiver, he wants to claim the ITC, and the ITC can only be claimed when the GSTR1 is being put up by the supplier in the portal. And because of that reason, the auto population is done in 2A and 2B, and then the receiver can see the portal and know how much of the ITC is available. So, say for example, you as a supplier has gone with the GST, you or the supplier has gone with the QRMP. Your receiver, but it is in the monthly scheme, and he would want to know what is the monthly credit that he can take, and he doesn't know about it. So, how this kind of a scenario can be resolved? That scenario can be resolved, students, through this IFF facility, the invoice furnishing facility, students. So, what I will do is that as a supplier, primarily I will start uploading the invoices in the portal, and then the portal will do this auto population, and the recipient will know primarily how much of the GST would be eligible for the ITC for the recipient, which will enable the recipient to file his 3B return. That exactly is the point, Shruds. So over here, Shruds, this is the point which has been given to you. Now just IFF facility, some salient feature has been given to this particular chart. Just a read, single read is sufficient. An optional facility, that is the case. Provided to quarterly taxpayer who are in the QRMP scheme, not for all. And why this IFF facility? I have told you that. And this is an optional facility which will be exercised by those supplier who has got many B2B supply. So though the supplier has gone with the QRMP, knowing the fact that his recipient is also in the business and he would want the ITC, therefore he will then go with this option of IFF so as to give him that benefit of the ITC. to file their details of output supply in the first 2 months of the quarter. Why first 2 months only? Why not the third month? Any case, the third month, for that, when you actually will file your GSTR 3B primarily at that point of time, you are also going to, it is also going to with GSTR 1. So where the challenge is the first 2 months, because the first 2 months is completely silent. For the third month, probably any case, you will have your due dates, and that due date before that you will your GSTR 1, and that is the reason why the first 2 months of that quarter becomes relevant. Now, by when you have to file this IFF, students, just before the 3B returns. 3B happens and on 20th of next month. This IFF, what they have said is that up to 13th of next month, you need to file what your IFF. Cumulative value is given to you, that is fine. The objective is to pass on the credit to the recipient. You have to. So this is the point, students, which has been there over here in this regard. So students, this is the scenario which has been given to you over here, and that exactly the point, students. So therefore, we are done with this particular proposition of the IFF, which should suffice. Thereafter, now, students, you see the QRMP facility, which I've given you page number 6 to page number 9. Let's see QRMP facility notes, which has been mentioned in this regard. The QRMP part, students. We'll just quickly run through it, although they will not ask you all that thing, but just for the sake of quick recap and revision, students, just we are trying to put up this particular observation. So this GSTR 2 and GSTR 2B, as you know, students, primary GSTR 2A, students, is all about the details of the input service. Just remember only this much. This through the auto population 2 and 2B is generated. So this is about details of the input service. Whereas 2B, if you talk about, is the details of ITC. That much is sufficient. Rest of it you just chip in this context. Fine. After that, students, is we have done it. Let's see the QRMP scheme from this case. The optional return filing scheme, quarterly return, monthly payment. So that is a basic particular point, students, that we all are aware of it. So any case, this particular point is known. Next particular point, students, which has been there. Who is eligible for the QRMP? This could be an important one, students. This context. So taxpayer having aggregate turnover of up to 5 crores in the taxpayer having what? The aggregate turnover of up to rupees 5 crores in the financial year, that will create the eligibility. Conditions to be fulfilled for becoming eligible. So what are that conditions to be fulfilled for becoming eligible? Taxpayer must have furnished the last return as due on the date of exercising such option. Taxpayer must have furnished the last return as due on date of exercising such option. So it should be the important point that if no return has been filed, last return which was made applicable, if you have not filed that return, then we will not be allowing you this. Just tick mark this also should validity of option once exercised. Taxpayer are not required to exercise their option every quarter. Where such option has been exercised once, they shall continue to furnish the return as per the selected option for the future tax period unless they revise the set. So every quarter you don't have to. So I think that is more or less self-explanatory. Not stretch it up on this. This is very important, students. And think logically why they have given this. Opting off QRMP scheme is GSTY. Opting off QRMP scheme is GSTINY. Person may avail QRMP scheme option for some GSTI and not for the other GST. Up till now, whatever we always keep, like for example, a composition scheme. Supposingly, a particular branch is doing a composition scheme in a particular state of the same person, another branch in the another state, can they go with the normal scheme? Answer is no. We have seen till now everywhere this point was there that if one takes it, it will follow for the other also. The point in the previous lecture, that the previous topic that we've discussed for the context of the registrations and all, I gave you that if one of the, like Tripura was the example wherein the limit was 10 lakhs. Okay, so if it is at 10 lakhs, then for all the other state it becomes 10 lakhs. It cannot have an independent of the limit applicable to the, it cannot have the independence from the lower limit applicable to a particular state. So if one particular state has got a lower limit, all the state will have the same limit. We have seen that in the previous chapter. What about in this case? This is the only particular area of the QRMP which goes on the GSTI and wise, which means this that, say for example, say one state, so there is a person has got two places of business. Particular person is having two places of business. Therefore, one particular place of business in Maharashtra, another place of business say in Gujarat. Now, as far as the Maharashtra state is concerned, students, say for example, for the Maharashtra state, they are dealing more with the recipient who are also engaged in the business, who are also engaged in the business. Whereas, by another place of business, which is Gujarat, there, students, what is the scenario? That particular place is only dealing with the consumer, only dealing with the consumer. Now, if that is the case, students, now you tell me in this context, and the aggregate turnover of both the place of business in the last year was less than 5 crore, means not more than 5 crore. Now, the question therefore arises in this context is, question is that in that Maharashtra state, where my buyer is also a buyer is also a, indeed, in the Maharashtra state, students, where my buyer, students, who is my buyer in this context? In the Maharashtra state. That's exactly the point, students. So far as the Maharashtra state, my buyer in Maharashtra state, student, is whom? Is the business entity. So I would want, he would want the credit, and I don't want to get into the hassle of the QRMP and every month I keep loading the invoices for him to get this one. So what I'm doing is that I'm going with the normal scheme. So it's an optional, na? And therefore now I'm exercising the optional based on my GSTIN in Maharashtra. So therefore, in that context, there I am going with the normal scheme. Whereas in Gujarat, because my consumer doesn't require what? They don't require this particular ITC. Therefore, I'm opting in Gujarat for QRMP. Can I do that? And the answer is this facility is available only over here. All the other cases, this facility is not available. Opting out, students, you can see that if my turnover is more than 5 crores, then definitely I need to opt out from the same. I hope that all of you are clear with this one. Same thing, students, here also GSTR 3B also the same thing. What is that? Even though it is like no business activity in any particular tax period, whether still the GSTR 3B is required to be filed, and the answer is yes, it is. Rest of the things, students, I think we are already have. Let's see, particular. Just have a look, students, over here, page number 12. Page number 12, students. Mark this to be very important. Rectification of errors or omission. which we all are aware of it. Now, this rectification is in the context of 3B, which we already are aware of it. Now, if you see over here, can you do a revision of returns? Answer is no. Can you do rectification primarily if it is on account of scrutiny, audit, inspection, or enforcement activity? Can you do a rectification because of that reason? Again, the answer is no. This is where, students, you have to be careful. Rectification is a subsequent return. So the maximum time limit, if you can see, for rectification is 30th of day of the November of the next financial year, which we already are aware, and this is the point. Now over here, students, just I'm putting up the questions which are there. Question number 7, page number 18, and then question number 16, page number 20. Just write for this one because only there are few questions which is worth a reference. This is one among them. This is one among them. And then finally, students, the next page, if you can see over here, the first return and the file return. Just tick mark that. First return and the file return. And for the file return, students, there is one more question. So, three questions, students, you are going to see so far as your LDR is concerned in this particular chapter is concerned. Three questions. Which are those three questions, students? In this context, the first return is the point. So, if you see over here the first return in this context, so what is this first return concept altogether? So, students, you know that I told you that, say, for example, you have crossed the threshold of 20 lakhs. Now you become liable to pay for the GST. You are liable for the registration. You are liable for the registration. Now, within 30 days, you can make an application. Okay, so that is what the 30 days time frame will run after that threshold is crossed. So now you have crossed the threshold 20 lakhs, and the 30 days period which we are talking about it, that 30 period in that sense, you have made the application. Now, obviously, you are waiting it. You have not got the GSTR number at yet, and thereafter, after some point of time, after some point of time, you are getting what, friends? You are getting this particular. Indeed, friends. After some particular point of time, you are now getting that particular GSTR number. You are now getting what, students? The GSTR number. Do you all agree to this one? Now, what happens? Now, you will be filing the returns thereafter. That is fine. But what about that much of the gap that has already gone by? Gap from after you became liable for registered till the date you got registration. That period return is what is known as the first return. That period return is what is known as the first return. This is what it is. This context. That's clear to all of you. And your final return, for this is important. The final return, if you can see over here in this context, is a taxable person whose registration surrendered or cancelled. Please highlight the word surrendered or cancelled within 3 months of the date of cancellation or the date of order of cancellation, whichever is late. So that is a time frame, very case. Within 3 months of the date of cancellation or the date of order of cancellation, whichever is later, this is the time frame, and that is what it is. Rest of it, students, we already have considered it. With that, students, we will now go into the Q&A. Students, these are the Q&As which are straight away. These kind of Q&A, students, you need to just read it out. Read it once and read it one more time. Everything is self-explanatory over here in this case. Already we have dealt with it. So, which type of taxpayer need to file the annual return under section 44 enumerate? Now, what you can do instead of writing this theory, I already know, I have already told you which are the taxpayers to whom the annual return has to be filed. Just make the list of it along with the due dates. Write it in your word, make it in a simplified presentation instead of writing like this kind of a thing. Is that clear to all of you? Is an annual return under 44 and the file return one and the same? Explain. And the answer is no. You explain for the file return, probably under what circumstances the file return would be filed. Explain the circumstances. And the annual return is something that you have to keep on filing probably every year. Is it compulsory for a taxpayer to file return by himself? Is this concept of the Goods and Service Tax Practitioner? Just read it once. Okay, the FLOP scheme. Okay, that is the scenario. Through the, like in the income tax law, also there is an income tax practice, tax return preparer scheme, a flop scheme again. Same thing is there here also. Point number five, Mr. Anand Kumar, a regular taxpayer, filed GSTR 1 for the month of August before the due date. Later in the month of February, he discovers error in GSTR 1 of the month of August. Already filed and wants to revise it. Can he revise it? I told you that just now we have done this thing. No, revision is not possible. What you can do is only rectify. That is the only possibility that you have. And by when you can rectify, once it's period up 30th of November of the next month. That is what it is in this context. This much only has to be returned. B Limited has filed the return for the month of October belatedly. At the time of computing the late fee, this is it. At the time of computing the late fee paid for the delay in filing return, B Limited has taken a view that if the late fee has been paid as per the provision under the CGST Act, there is no requirement of paying the late fee under the SGST Act for the same default. Whether B Limited has taken a correct view, and the answer is no. See, we are only concerned with the late fee right now in the CGST because we are doing the CGST. But the same provision would also be there in the SGST law. This point we have been doing, I've been telling you right from day one. Therefore, this view is incorrect. If there is a late fee provision in the CGST, that does not mean that there will not be any late fee provision in the SGST. There will be a corresponding similar provision in the SGST as well. Question number seven. So here, so there is no presentation format. Huh? Just it is a common sense. Whatever you have done it, just apply that. Make table if you want. That is what that you need to do. Tax authority have been scrutinizing the return furnished by A Limited. During the scrutiny process, A Limited has been made aware by the tax authority about an incorrect disclosure in a return under Section 39 filed by it for a particular tax. A Limited seeks your opinion to rectify the incorrect disclosure made in the return. Please tell me rectification. There was one cross. Rectification students, there was one cross. And what was that cross? The cross was that if there is something coming out of the search, audit, or inspection, then in those particular circumstances, students, can you then, in those particular circumstances, students, can you then do the rectification? To that, the answer is ABC Limited applied for cancellation of GST registration in the month of March. In the month of September, the consultant of ABC Limited suggested to furnish the final return in the said month. He advised the company that a final return needs to be furnished before the due date of furnishing the return for the month of September of subsequent financial year or before furnishing of annual return. So ABC Limited applied for cancellation of GST registration in the month of March, the month of September. This is important. That is what we are talking about. In the final return, this question was marked. Okay, so he has applied for cancellation. Now, what they are trying to say over here in this context, in the month of September, the consultant of ABC Limited suggested to furnish the final return in the said month. He advised the company that the final return needs to be furnished before the due date of furnishing the return for the month of September of subsequent financial year or before the furnishing of annual return, whichever is earlier. However, the jurisdictional authorities have yet not passed the order of cancellation due to the reason not known to ABC Limited. Whether the advice given by the consultant of ABC Limited is correct or not. Students, be careful. They use the word for final return. Just check once. They have used the word surrendered or cancelled. So if it is not surrendered or not cancelled, then whether this can be done, and the answer is no. The point, students. So if the process of cancellation is pending, the process of cancellation is pending, then you cannot file your final return. The final return can only be filed when the cancellation has happened, and that is what you need. XYZ Limited has deducted. No, the students, you just take it. Whether GST tax return preparer, read it. Again, question number 11 is outright question. Rectification of return, we have discussed it. Just question number 12, Padma. Okay, here for there is one correction. There are double two, 230. Padmavati trader registered in Karnataka is engaged in supply of taxable goods. Its turnover in the preceding financial year was 230 lakh and was furnishing its GST return on monthly basis. In the beginning of the April month, in the current financial year, it sought advice from its tax consultant, Dua Consultant, whether it can furnish its GST return on quarterly from now onward. Dua Consultant advised Padmavati traders that it cannot furnish its return on quarterly basis as the GST law does not provide for quarterly return under any circumstance. Discuss the technical veracity of the advice given by Dua Consultant. You tell me now, students, in this case. So, in the beginning of this one, students, whether it can go with the quarterly scheme, QRMP scheme, what they are considered as advice that no, you cannot do that. As the law does not provide any circumstances. That is nonsense. Discuss the technical veracity. Nonsense advice. There is a law, and the QRMP first, you have to talk about the eligibility. When you will be eligible, so your preceding financial year turnover should not be more than rupees 5 crores, which has been satisfied. If that is the case, students, then you can opt for what? Opt for the QRMP at the beginning of the quarter, which he wants to do. That is what he can definitely do in this regard. This is what, students, will be the case. And then if you want to also write about the IFF, you can just write about that. In this case, he can also opt for the IFF if you want. That is the case. GSTR 3B will be filed, and then you can also write when the GSTR 3B, what is the due date of filing the GSTR 3B. You can also write about the annual return due dates. Sorry, you can also write about first the monthly payment due date. Okay, and what is the annual return due date, student? That also can be put across. These are the few points that you can write. Therefore, finally, the conclusion is that the consultant's advice is wrong. You are highlighting the QRMP provision, some salient feature of the QRMP, just put it across. Answer the following question elaborating the relevant provision of section 44, which is for the annual return. That's the reason why I have just taken the reference numbers 39 for return, 44 for annual return. 39 for regular return, 44 for annual return. Answer the following questions enumerating the relevant provision of section 44. Who is required to furnish the annual return and what is the due date for furnishing? You will just list down again this repetitive of earlier one. What is the prescribed form? We know. Okay, done with this. Mr. Mahindra, a registered person, came to know about QRMP scheme but was unable to make a decision whether to opt or not. Describe the eligibility in a plain theory question. Let's see this case study. Question number 16. Mrs. Sahu and Company, a registered firm, has filed its GST return in GSTR1 for the month of February, declaring an outward supply of 300 lakhs. The return was filed within the due date of its file. So, Mrs. Sahu and Company, a registered firm, has filed its GSTR return in GSTR1 for the February, declaring an outward supply of 300 lakhs. The return was filed within the due date of its filing. That return, student, was filed within what? The due date of its filing. However, on a subsequent reconciliation of the return with the books of account, it was found that 5 invoices having a total value of rupees 20 lakh towards supply made to local parties were inadvertently omitted to be reported. Cow and Company has approached you for an advice as to the action to be adopted. Now tell me one thing. In this case, student, first of all, this can be done with. Now over here, did the department found out this one in this regard? And the answer is no. During inspection, survey, search, and the answer is no. Therefore, in that case, can you do it? You can write the time limit 30th of November. Time limit you can do. And one more point, Ruth, hear it. this part, that particular point in mind. Here in the question, tax and interest at 18% due on the turnover omitted to be reported on the month of February has to be paid along with the taxes for the month in which the omission is noted. That we already know, friends, in this context. However, such rectification will be allowed only within the prescribed period as mentioned above. That exactly is the point over here. This particular part, just bear it in mind, friends, this context. This is the point. I think that is all of it. Topic is one. Get through. So now, friends, I'll see you in the next class for the next topic along with the ITC.